Before we start, remember to go to savetheinternet.info/demos and see where the nearest anti-Article 13 demo is for you tomorrow, and then go there. A lot of people like to talk about how virtual reality is the future and how in a few short decades we will be just all the time in some virtual place that doesn't really exist. I've always considered the contention that the virtual world somehow isn't real to be a bit odd, considering half the world's economy runs on the internet. But let's be honest, the future is not the unreal world. The future is the unreal world and the real world blending together into the actual real world, because that's how it's always been. Unless we get the kind of virtual reality where you're in like a suit and it goes right into your brain and you don't actually move, you're basically asleep exploring some fictional fantasy world, I don't think it's ever going to become as popular or widespread as its younger brother, augmented reality. Because frankly, augmented reality can do most of the things that virtual reality can do, except you don't bump into things. But what even is virtual reality? Basically, it's an overlay as to what you see, and it interprets the visual data you receive and puts more data on top of it. Like for instance, right now, one of the early commercial explorations of virtual reality seems to be, especially with alcohol, this seems to be a very popular ad campaign where they have sort of figures on the label. And if you get a special app and you look at them, like even in the supermarket, in any kind of context, and it recognizes the figure starts doing like a song and dance.
I fought for freedom. My name is James Wilson, and I fight to the end.
Primarily, AR has a lot of practical applications, like allowing you to visualize things that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to visualize. Like say, you want to put up a painting at the wall. You kind of know where the electrical wires in your walls are running because they follow certain rules. But with this, you can actually see them as like an outline. Or if you're a road worker, you can see where the pipes are running. And there's also this. But let's be honest, this channel isn't so much about important practical applications for things that could improve the lives of millions, but about cool stuff that we do for vanity, because I'm an artist, not an engineer. And there already are art installations that take advantage of augmented reality. Usually the way AR works right now is that your phone recognizes its position and the markers that you have set up for it, and then projects whatever it is that is in the AR so you see it. Like for instance, it scans a QR code recognizing something that is in the real world, a marker, and sends you something virtual, which is a website. And that may sound simple and limited with the current technology that we have, and yeah, sure, that might be true. However, we are living in an age where AI is rapidly learning to interpret visual stimuli and other kinds of stimuli. It is learning to just recognize stuff. And based out of that same technological development, we are on the brink of a whole new age of procedural generation. And let's just assume that in the future we're gonna have like contact lenses, which are screens and cameras at the same time, so you don't have to get the AR through your phone and run around like this all the time. Close your eyes for a moment. Let me paint you a picture. You leave your house in the morning. On the street outside, mighty beasts of brass and steel spew out plumes of steam. Your fellow commuters are all dressed in neo-Victorian garb. You look up at the sky and see airships colonized by swarms of clockwork birds. Then you decide that the steampunk overlay isn't your thing today. Call up your menu and go through your library. After a brief flash of people just looking kind of normal, and cars on the road simply being self-driving EVs, you enter a different world entirely. The buildings around you become dense vegetation. The road is a raging river you do not want to cross. Everyone around is a noble fairy from the court, a white palace rising on the horizon, its gold-coated spires poking up into the star-spangled sky. You jerk back as a white stag suddenly emerges from the underbrush ahead of you. Swarms of tiny pixies surround you, glowing in all the colors of the rainbow. This is the world you live in now. The world that is whatever you want it to be. That is the power of augmented reality. And you could implement this in any manner of degrees and ways, really. You could limit this to, say, maybe only recognize windows. And then I press a few buttons and I look out my window here and suddenly I'm underwater. There's a coral reef. You could make it so potential hazards don't get disguised as fictional hazards. So you wouldn't see the raging stream, you would see like actual cars on the road. And the child that jumped up ahead on like a bicycle that you didn't see coming because he came out from his house wouldn't be a white stag. You could and probably would very often opt to join other people's AR overlays, and there might even be like publicly downloadable ones. I can imagine many like bars, restaurants, those kinds of places where you write ambience with a capital A, having their own AR overlays, maybe like even a selection. Frankly, entire communities could probably vote on having an official AR overlay for their area that is more, it's unique, it's more handcrafted to that place and not just procedurally generated. And when you enter that area, a message pops up and says, hey, do you want to use the official thing from our town here? Just imagine how much more immersive a lot of things could be if we had this kind of technology. I don't know if you've ever been to a LARP, but there's really nothing like a highway in the distance that you can see and hear to take you out of your fantasy plotline. Or maybe like an airplane flying overhead. Don't fret, for with augmented reality, so long as you are on the LARPing grounds, all of the stuff outside of the LARPing grounds, or things that don't fit into the LARPing grounds, they're just cancelled out. They're replaced with whatever fantasy kingdom you're being in. Tabletop gaming, too, could be massively improved by this, because, let's be honest, miniatures are extremely expensive and time-consuming, and that goes double if you're building whole, like, dungeons on your table, actual dungeons that you don't just sketch out. It would be a lot easier to do, and they could be animated. We already have some pilot projects exploring this kind of idea. Which, that obviously opens the whole, the cool holographic planning table that would make organizing tasks and visualizing problems a lot easier and improve the workflow of pretty much any kind of organization that it is implemented in. And that's all great. But with a few tactile components, you could actually use this to digitalize a lot of hobbies that you couldn't previously, and to further meld the real physical world with its virtual overlay. I've actually not been able to find this video again, but basically you had this guy who had like a sandbox, a small sandbox with sand in it, and depending where he put hills and mountains of sand, a height map would adjust, and it would basically recreate a virtual image of the mountain range that he had created. Now imagine applying that to like the model train hobby, or the other people who do like the mini soldiers in the American Civil War. You could actually have those really fight out stuff. And you might say, hey, but like painting the minis is half the fun. And if you like that kind of stuff, then more power to you. It's not like that will become illegal. But I think that for a lot of people, whipping up Blender and building the figurines there, coloring them, making completely custom concepts, and just throwing them out on the table, sharing them with all manner of people online will also be a similar amount of fun. Augmented reality doesn't just superimpose the virtual world onto the physical world. It allows the two to become one in a way that has never been possible before. You can't go out into the park right now and play StarCraft with your friends. Except with AR, you can do that. We could even make impromptu maps using actual real-world physical terrain in the area where we are at. Like, for example, okay? I can see this game in my head. I've been able to see it for a very long time. You're with some friends, you're at the beach, there's a rock, like just a small rock, maybe this size. And then you turn this into a map, you define the limits in the virtual reality. And then after a few seconds of computing, it's a map, it's a battlefield, and you can project your own minifigurines there and then have like a strategy game going on, just like that. You could seamlessly apply the virtual world to the real world, but also the other way around because of how well things are being mapped at this point. Like you were on vacation and you played a particularly cool game on like a really special rock that had interesting topography. But now you're no longer on vacation, but I would really just like to play on that map again. Yeah, let's just do it. It's still saved. The map was virtualized at one point when it was read into the program, So just go to the table and project it on there and do the same thing. Even if the rock is bigger than the table, you can just scroll around because it's all virtual. You can apply this to trading card games, get this Yu-Gi-Oh! AR stuff that we all wanted as kids, let's be honest. Implement this with something like, I don't know, Pokemon Go. You could have actual Pokemons that you see in the wild, and then you throw Pokeballs at them. And then you have 100 people who are playing completely different games and are doing sort of weird motions of their own that only make sense in the context of their niche game. Just imagine the level of self-expression that will be possible through this. The incredible outfits that are just physically not possible right now, then done on the cheap. So long as you retain proper dimensions so as to not become an AR hazard, you can do anything. You want glowing eyes, chrome skin? Fuck it, yeah, you can have that. And not only can you do impossible things, you can do things on the cheap also. They built a massive underwater hotel in Dubai a while ago, and I think they also have like an underwater restaurant in Norway also, and all those things are just vastly expensive. They're done for vanity, and yeah, I do agree, they're cool. But with AR, any hotel can be an underwater hotel. With AR, any restaurant can be an underwater restaurant. Doesn't have to be underwater, could be on Mars, could be just in the void of the stars. People already own fancy cars in GTA. They don't cost as much as a real Corvette. So we could and probably would be a lot more vain and interested in sort of pointless aesthetics, but at the same time, it would be much cheaper to do so than it even is now. You're gonna save on money, you're gonna save on material costs, because you can plate your whole house in gold. It's just not real gold. It's virtual gold, doesn't really make a difference to you. Even space itself, we would be a lot more economical with, because two virtual constructs can coexist in the same time and place. Like, you go to the plaza, there's a dragon on top, but for the guy like a few steps to that direction, he sees, I don't know, like spaceships. The production process of all of this stuff would become so much cheaper. Imagine Michelangelo doing the roof of the Sistine Chapel on like a weekend in Photoshop. Imagine the levels of excellence he could have strived to if he had those kinds of tools that made simple things work all of the time. I do think that whichever generation grows up with augmented reality, probably like the next one, is going to have to contest this against us. Because, oh, it's a new thing, and all the juvenoia, and all the dangers, and won't you think of the children? You know, like we are right now having to contest the internet. And it's not like augmented reality wouldn't be creating some new problems that we never had before, because it definitely would. Like, for instance, I can see this actually becoming like a common problem. You're with a guy or a girl, and you superimpose another face on them. I mean, we can do this already with deepfakes, right? And then you're with someone and you superimpose like the face of a celebrity because, I don't know, you find them more attractive, and you do this without their knowledge or consent. Or you superimpose an image of maybe your ex, and then that will come out, because obviously it always comes out, and it can be severely psychologically, emotionally damaging to a relationship and to a person. In the same realm, remember when there were like TV ads for apps that you could get on your phone? You just had to call in and give them like $5, and then you could take a picture of a person and the app would make them be naked, except that obviously that never worked because the technology wasn't that far. Well, the technology will at that point be that far, and we were gonna have to ask ourselves, is it sexual harassment if I am on the street or at my workplace and I have it set so in the AR so that all of the people that I see are naked? Because they will actually have a very accurate representation of what these people would look like naked, because machines will be able to do that kind of thing. And because play will be moved back into like the real world meat space, I think we might get like a few problems with people having like fake guns running around because they want to play like CSGO in real life. I actually wrote a short story about this, I am remembering just now. One of the frequent arguments that I personally find quite weak is ads. Just install an ad blocker. We have ad blockers already, and then you might see fewer ads than you see right now in that situation. It's like, oh, what if someone hacks my vision? Take out the contact lenses. They're contact lenses. You can just, it's People who have contact lenses do it every day. Ironically, a lot of the things that were criticized for like late Gen X's and millennials and now like Gen Z people, that they live in these virtual worlds that only exist in computer screens, all of that might no longer be valid criticism in the future, because then the virtual world will be everywhere. And it is a no-brainer that the potential benefits of widespread augmented reality use far outweigh any of the problems that are going to occur because of this. Much like it's a no-brainer with the internet. I mean, in education alone, imagine being a teacher that teaches kids about the Ice Age, and you can just transport the classroom into the Ice Age. The future might be largely devoid of computer screens because you can just do a screen anywhere you are at all times. The future might be a place where more kids play outside because it's not like the much more interesting play opportunity can only be done inside in front of the computer. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this? I always see like the practical applications, and yeah, the practical applications are phenomenal. But I care about the cool stuff. What applications did I miss? Probably many. What concerns did I miss? That's something I actually am very interested in. Leave it down in the comments. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share it to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Patreon or purchasing some of my beautiful merchandise, where still there is a may or may not be a future merch item in the works also. And in that spirit, allow yourself to dream a little. Allow yourself to be optimistic, to indulge in some of the childhood fantasies that you've always wanted to have, because they are coming true. And see you around, cunts.